Hello, hello, hello. Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today I'm going to be repotting my Aloe Bonsai. Here is a look at the first aloe I'll be repotting. This is my oldest aloe. It was started in 2016. I call it Medusa because it looks like a head full of snakes. It is an Aloe barbadensis, and I last repotted it in October of 2019. So it's due for a repotting. Now, is this a bonsai? That is the question. By the way, any resemblance of the aloe to my hair is purely coincidental. So what is a bonsai? That is a good question. Bonsai to me is more than just a tray planting. I think bonsai has to have some element of miniaturization to the plant, and it also has to have some artistic design intent. And that can range from a natural looking plant to something that's quite abstract. Can a succulent plant like my aloe here be a bonsai? I think so. There are aloes in nature that grow into a tree form. The quiver tree, for example, has a giant trunk with bark on it, branches and a canopy. It definitely grows in a tree-like form. Another succulent that grows in a tree form is the giant African baobab tree. I don't think anyone would argue that that is not a tree, that it's a plant. I think it fits the definition of a tree. In botany, a tree is a perennial plant with an elongated stem or trunk, usually supporting branches and leaves. In some usages, the definition of a tree may be narrower, including only woody plants with secondary growth, plants that are usable as lumber, or plants above a specified height. There are many people that would never accept an aloe as a bonsai. If they saw it in a bonsai show, they would just go, well, that's a house plant. They wouldn't even look at it. So I think it depends on your attitude. It's definitely not a traditional bonsai subject, that's for sure. It doesn't go through 4 seasons like some trees do. It grows differently than a tree, but it still has an element of miniaturization. Ever since I've been growing this aloe, the leaves have gotten smaller and smaller and more miniature. The trunks have gotten larger. I'm getting aerial roots. I'm getting a flared root base. So it's definitely growing in a tree-like form. And to me, you know, that qualifies as a bonsai. Many people would consider my giant African baobabs here a tree because it looks more like a tree, less like a succulent, but it is a succulent plant. My crown of thorns here is also a succulent plant, and it's definitely growing in a tree-like form. If you don't consider this aloe a bonsai, it doesn't really matter to me. I really enjoy growing it. It has, you know, an element of miniaturization in the leaves and the form, and it also has a design intent. I have a style in mind for it, and I'm growing it to achieve that style. I've got my tiger aloe out here, and I want to show you the difference in the leaves. So my aloe here, my Medusa, the leaves look very similar to this when it was young. Big, thick, fleshy leaves, very large. And then as the roots begin to fill the container and I get more and more growing tips on the top of the tree, the leaves have become smaller and smaller, and you can see how narrow they are, and they're not as long, they're shorter, they don't sprawl all over the place. I mean, there are still some large leaves in it, but every year they're getting a little bit smaller, which is quite interesting. So I expect this tiger aloe to eventually kind of achieve the same form. You can see the trunk that's developing on it. It's getting very large. These are all pups I planted from the original plant, and they're all surviving and growing. So this will be sort of an aloe forest for now, and then in the future I may separate it into individual plants. My baobab style jade here is also a succulent grown in a tree-like form, and it's another plant that I really enjoy growing and styling. Some people wouldn't call this a bonsai. I definitely would. In the past, every time I repotted my Medusa aloe here, I've been upsizing the pot. So the tree's been growing larger. I've been increasing the size of the pot. Today, I'm not going to increase the pot. I'm going to use the same pot. So I'm going to look at the roots, look at the root structure, prune away, all the long roots, and put it in the same pot. And I'm hoping to kind of keep that miniaturization going on this plant. I don't want to keep uppotting it every year until it becomes like this giant aloe that you can't manage. So, for me, the goal in bonsai is not to grow the trees larger, but to try and keep them smaller or to a reasonable size. I'm going to shift from that side of the table over here, and I'll show you what I have. I bought this plant the other day, and I showed it on a video, and I thought it was a Haworthia, but someone in the comments said, no, that's an aloe. So I looked it up on the internet, and it is. It's a small leaf aloe called Aloebrevifolia, which just means short-leaved aloe. They're from South Africa, and the common name for them is the crocodile plant because it has the teeth along the leaves like that. These short-leaved aloes can grow to 24 to 50 centimeters high or 1 to 2 feet high, so quite tall. And this one already has a fairly tall structure to it, so I can prune away the lower leaves and kind of expose a bit of a trunk. Now, I mentioned in the last video that I was going to plant it in my desert rose forest to replace one of the desert roses that died, and I've been thinking, should I do that or should I put it in its own pot? I was sent a gift from Jason Hanrahan. It is a bonsai pot, and it's made by Tom Buttersworth. So this is from the United Kingdom, and Jason is also from the United Kingdom, and I'll put a link to his YouTube channel in the description below. So this pot is it's just beautiful. Jason mentioned that Tom Butterworth is one of his favorite UK ceramic artists, and I can see why. I mean, the pot is just fantastic. There's the bottom of it. Yeah, it's just a work of art. It's beautiful. Jason mentions in his letter that my bonsai channel was one of the factors that got him into bonsai, so he wanted to send me a gift to say thank you. So thanks very much, Jason. I really appreciate it. That is a beautiful gift. I have succulents on my mind today, and I'm thinking a jade would look fantastic in this pot. A big thick trunk jade about this high would look great. It would, I think it would really suit it, both the color, which kind of matches the trunk, and the size is good. Jades don't need a lot of roots, and this is a fairly deep pot. It would get good drainage. So I'm thinking of putting a jade in here, and I might put the Wynard jade in here from Scott Wynard of Let's Do Bonsai. I think it would suit it really nicely, so look for that in a future episode. Tom from the YouTube channel Grow and Clip Bonsai for Seniors sent me these stones the other day. I think they're dragon stones, kind of really interesting stones. It could make a nice penjing or a root over rock bonsai. So very exciting. It's always nice to have beautiful stones that you can work with in the future. So look for these stones in an upcoming episode of the Bonsai Zone, where I'll be using them either as a penjing or a root over rock planting. Thanks very much, Tom and Jason. The gifts are wonderful. I'm so spoiled. Thank you very much. I'm going to start the work today by potting up this small leaf aloe or Aloebrevifolia in my Socotra Island desert rose landscape. So I'll go into the plant room and bring that out here to the greenhouse, and we'll try it out in the pot. Here's a look at my Socotra Island desert rose landscape. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the trees survived the winter. The one here didn't. What happened is that several of them, I think 1, 2, 3, 4 of them began leafing out in the winter time. I haven't watered them the entire winter. I was just leaving them bone dry. And they started leafing out, and I thought, well, they're going to need some water eventually, right? So I began kind of lightly watering them. I would water them maybe once every week, and not, you know, thoroughly saturating the soil, just kind of, well, more of a mist. And then I noticed the one here was starting to shrivel up at the base. It started getting a soft spot on it, and I went, oh no. So, okay. So I stopped the watering immediately, and luckily none of the others kind of got soft and died. It was only the one. So yeah, it just shriveled up and died. So I lost one, which is interesting now that there's 5 in the planting, an odd number, which is, you know, probably better. And I think it probably was a little too crowded anyway. I always meant to plant some different types of plants in here. On Socotra Island they have the desert roses like these, and then they also have the dragon trees, which are very famous. And I don't have, to reproduce a dragon tree, I can't use the dragon tree species because, first of all, they're very rare and hard to get seeds from, and also I don't think they would miniaturize well. They wouldn't be in scale with the desert rose. So I have to use some plant that kind of looks like those dragon trees, and maybe this aloe is kind of close. It should kind of give you that feeling, I think. At least I hope. I'm also looking at this Socotra Island landscape here, and I think it was a good try. There's a lot of elements in here I just don't like. I don't like the color of the sand here, and I think it's okay to start off rough, but it's got to get finer as I go to the back. I think a lighter colored sand, so mixing that white industrial sand with a bit of playground sand, I think will get the right color. It'll match the rocks better, kind of giving it, well, it'll match not only the rocks but also the trunks of the desert rose, giving it that real gray sun-bleached look, like intense sun, intense heat. That's what I'm going for. So I'm going to redo the landscape in this also. So I'm thinking this video, it may turn from a video about aloes. Part 1 will be more on the Socotra Island landscape, redoing it and getting it to look really good. So I'm going to leave this planting out here in the greenhouse now. They'll get sunlight. I think that's what these desert rose needs, is good light and warm temperatures, and they'll start growing, I hope. The first issue I want to address in this landscape is the rocks. It's very heavy because I have a lot of stones in the landscape, and I'm not sure I need them all. I think I have too many. I think it's kind of distracting. It's competing against the plants or the desert rose. Maybe it'll look less competitive once I get the sand color, a better color. But I think I have too many stones in this landscape. Before I look at the stones, I noticed there's some fine webbing here, and there's some stickiness on these branches. So I'm thinking I might have spider mites on here. Some kind of insect anyway. So I'm going to spray it with soap and water, try and get rid of those. So here I go. And I'll spray everything in the planting here. Okay, I can't really rinse these off because if I rinse them off, I'll water the soil, and I don't want to begin root rot. It's quite a transition bringing them from the plant room out to the greenhouse here. So I think I'd better let them kind of acclimatize out here first before I begin any watering. You'll notice on these desert rose, if they are starved of water, the trunks will start shriveling up, and I haven't noticed that at all. They're still good and firm. There's no problems with them. So that's always a good sign. I'm removing the dead desert rose. You can see how shriveled up the trunk is. It's too bad that died, but I'm glad the other 5 lived. I'm out front now studying the landscape, looking at these rocks. In my original planting, I wanted land and a water feature here, like the coast, because it is an island and these desert rose grow along the coast. It's not looking like that. It doesn't work. I certainly don't think I need this rock here. I'm going to take it away. I don't need this one. That one's gone too. I want a clear view of the desert rose. This one is a bit odd on the end. I don't need that one. I don't want any features on the extreme edges of the planting, like these two. They're too close to the edge. So they can come out also. I do like the rocks in the background, at least the big one anyway. The other ones, well, I'm just removing some of the spider webbing from, I don't know if it's from spiders or spider mites or what it is, but kind of get rid of it. Yeah, the rocks in the background, I like the big one there. I think that's really good. Yeah, I think the stones in the background are fine. I don't mind them at all. I think they're quite nice. I'm wondering about the foreground stones. Do I need them? I may want this one here. I've got all the mass of the stones on the left hand side. I may need something on the right hand side to counterbalance that a bit. And I think these ones, if they were moved over, sort of a clump here and then the background ones, I think that would look better. So I'm going to try that. I'm going to move these kind of together. I think that's an improvement. I think, as I said, this heavy mass of the rocks here is kind of counterbalanced by the ones up front here. And I have a fairly good view or sight line to all the trees. I don't have rocks in front of the trunks. So I think that's better. Next, I need to try out the aloe to see if it even looks halfway decent in there. If it can work or not, or if it's just adding an element to this planting that's just like bizarre or out of place. Let's try it out now. So here is the little aloe, so I'll just set it. This is where the other tree was. Now how does that look? I don't think the scale is out of place or anything. I think it could work nicely. It's certainly worth planting it and trying it out. So that, I think it can work. I also have some of those other aloes, those what are they called? Well, I'll show you what they are. These ones here, they were sent to me by Ashley from the UK. So I think, you know, let me just try it out back here. Yeah, they work pretty well too. Maybe even better than the aloe. That could certainly look like one of those dragon trees with it pruned up like that, like a kind of a flat mushroom canopy. Interesting. Possibility too. So I'll keep that in mind. I also have lots of those little cuttings too, which I could plant. Sometimes in bonsai forests, and that simplicity is always best. So maybe, you know, introducing more plants is just going to, it may just be too much. Take your eye away from the desert rose. So I'll have to think about that. I think definitely the rocks look better now. I think the next thing I want to work on is the ground cover. I do not like, this was the aquarium gravel. It's a nice color and it looks like stones on a beach. They're kind of rounded. It could work, you know, up front maybe, but I think I need the sand in the background, that's for sure. I'll get my tray underneath my Socotra island planting and begin combing away the surface soil. I find when you first plant a forest, it's overwhelming. You kind of, everything's new and it's hard to look at it with a critical eye. But I find, you know, as you study it over the year, that you start to notice things that can be improved in the planting. And sometimes it takes several years before you kind of refine it enough that you think, oh, that's much better. So I think I'll taper this landscape from fairly high at the back to kind of downhill towards the front. And after I'm finished today, if this doesn't work out, I'll try something else. You just keep trying until you go, yeah, that's it. That's looking good. Kind of trial and error. So these are the first desert rose that I've had that have made it through a winter. So in the past, desert rose and I have not gotten along well together. Every one I've gotten, and that's been several, I've managed to kill. And usually it's because I've done a bonsai operation to them, like root pruning or top pruning, and I think I just overwatered them. Didn't let them dry out enough after root pruning and that, so I kind of used poor technique on them. I think that was the cause of most of their demises. It was just me. So since then I've done a lot of reading on desert rose, and I'm hoping to keep these alive. It's a good sign getting it through the winter. My next step, I think, is just to fix up the surface of the soil so it looks miniature and realistic. I have got my white industrial sand here, and I have my washed playground sand back here. I usually mix them 50-50, and that gives me a nice light tan color, very reminiscent of the desert landscape. So I will try that, and if I need to lighten up some areas, I can add a bit more of the white sand to it to provide a bit of variation if I want it. All right, here I go stirring up. I'm going to use my hands. I hope that works. Here is a look. So it's very similar in color to the sand I already have in there. And I think it's darker than the rocks, and it's maybe a little darker than the trunks, at least where they're gray. I think I could go lighter, so I'm going to add the same quantity of white sand in with my existing mix, and I think that'll really brighten it up and give it that kind of bleached Socotra Island look. Here's my color match now. It's a little better. I wouldn't say it's a dramatic difference, but it's definitely lighter. So now it's time to apply it to the surface of the soil here. For that, I'll use my smaller blue scoop from Tom. So here I go. Yeah, I'm liking that color. Here is my first step back, and look at the planting. I do like the finer sand better than that coarser gravel I had. I think I like the lightness. It really matches the trunks of the desert rose, and the rocks are a little darker, which is okay. They're not too bad. There's not a significant difference. It kind of bleaches the whole landscape and gives me that feeling of Socotra Island. I think what I need to do now is look at some reference photos of Socotra Island, compare what I have now to what I would like to have it look like, and just see if there's anything I'm missing, details, rocks, maybe I want some coarser material up front to give forced perspective, going from rough to smooth at the back. A larger particle size down to a smaller, that might be an option. Maybe I need to add a bit of, as I said, some white sand in some areas to kind of get some color variation. So let me go inside. I'll look at some Socotra Island reference photos, and then we'll come back and take a second look at this planting with fresh new ideas.